It is. Good morning. It's March 27, 2025, and I'll call to order the Board of Directors meeting with Denton County Transportation Authority. So the first item is the invocation. Let's see if anybody would like to.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day, for the opportunity to come together once again and just to celebrate the success of the Denton County Transportation Authority as they've moved up 3.2 million passengers this year, and for the leadership of the team, staff. Thank you for the board members. Pray that you give us wisdom and discernment in the decisions that come before the board today, and help us to do what's best for the citizens of Denton County and all of our customers across North Texas. And we thank you for how you bless this organization and for both physically and leadership, and just pray that you'll continue to do that. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. First to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to introductions. Our regular chair, TJ Gilmore, is away on business, and we do have our alternate, Kristen Green, also from the city of Louisville, joining us. Paul, do we have any introductions?
Yes, sir. Just to note that our auditors representing Plant Moran are on the line with us. So Mr. Keith Samansky, I think, will be presenting with us here shortly via Zoom. So we welcome him to the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Oh, another.
Oh, sorry. Also, Ms. Taylor, if you want to come to the podium and bring introductions.
Yes, we have Shoes McKenzie, who is our senior manager of mobility.
Morning.
And we have Corey Gannon, the vice president, the director of operations support.
Welcome. Thank you. Great, thank you. Next, we have public comments. This is an agenda item to provide an opportunity for citizens to address the board of directors on any agenda items or matters related to DCTA. Anyone wishing to speak has a 3-minute time limit and shall be courteous and cordial. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, such as stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, or similar demonstrations will not be permitted. Citizens that are not able to connect to the Zoom meeting must have emailed their comments to Ms. Morse Perkins no later than 3 p.m. on Wednesday, March 26, 2025, to ensure that the comments will be distributed to the board members prior to the meeting. The board of directors is not permitted to take any action on any subject raised by a speaker during public comments. However, the board of directors may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer to the DCTA administration for further studies or action, or briefly state existing DCTA policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. At this time, Ms. Morse Perkins, do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
All right, then I will close public comments. Moving on, our next item is the consent agenda. These are items that are normally non-controversial and are usually taken as a group unless a particular director wishes to pull any particular items from the group. Board, what is your pleasure on this item?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. McGuire. We have a second by Ms. Green to approve the consent item as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Consent agenda passes. Okay, let us move on to the regular agenda. And the first item is to discuss and consider the acceptance of fiscal year 2024 fiscal audits. And with that, we are turning this over to Ms. Evans Jones, our CFO. this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, board. Good morning. I'm pleased to be here with you today, along with our audit principal, Mr. Keith Szymanski from the firm of Plant Moran, to present and talk with you about the results of our FY '24 audit. Accompanying this item, accompanying this item are three particular exhibits that were included in your packet. One is the ACFR, the audited financial statements that are there for your review. The other is our report on single audits. And the third item that was included as an exhibit is Plant Moran's report to the board as a result of their audit work. The items are being presented in draft form, or I would say like near final form. This is consistent with our past practice. We do that to allow for the board to review and provide any comments as needed. Following this meeting, pending approval, we will work with our finance team will work with the audit firm in finalizing the audit and taking kind of steps to make this near final document final. To that end, Keith, if you're there, I will turn it over to you to present the results or, any items that you wanted to talk to with respect to the FY '24 audit. And then thereafter, either Keith or myself are happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans-Jones, and good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you once again to discuss another successful audit. I believe someone in the room there will be advancing the slides. Thank you. So I've got just a short slide presentation to summarize the results of the audit rather than going through the many pages throughout the three deliverables. But as Ms. Evans-Jones mentioned, we'll be happy to take questions on anything in those at the end. So as we move through the presentation on this first slide here, just a short summary of the audit timeline. This presentation to the board is the culmination of about a 9-month process, but most of the core audit work has been done in the last 3 to 4 months. Moving on to the next slide, there are 3 deliverables that we're going through today. Plant Moran's main deliverable in the annual comprehensive financial report is just the independent auditor's report. The rest of that deliverable belongs to DCTA, and we'll also be summarizing the end of audit letter and the single audit report related to federal awards. The independent auditor's report, as Ms. Evans-Jones mentioned, is currently in draft form, but we will be finalizing it shortly after this, pending the board's approval. And it is an unmodified opinion, which is a clean audit report and the highest level of assurance we can give to a set of financial statements. So that's absolutely what DCTA should expect to receive on an annual basis, and what we're happy to provide once again for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2024. Moving on to the financial highlights, starting with the income statement items. The bottom line was an overall increase in net position of $8.1 million. So total revenue for the year exceeded expenses by those $8.1 million. Some of the key changes and trends over the last year: sales tax revenue, which is the largest revenue source, was $40.6 million, but that was a fairly modest increase of less than 1% compared to the previous year. Total operating revenue was $7 million. It increased $300,000, largely due to increases in ridership and as a result, increased passenger fare revenue. Total grant revenue was $12.4 million. That was up nearly $3 million compared to a year ago. And along with those increases in a few of the revenue categories, there were increased operating expenses as well. Those came in at just under $58 million in total, which was up more than $6 million compared to a year ago. Those increases were largely split across all of the various categories of operating expenses, including salaries, wages, and benefits, outsourced services, purchase transportation, and other categories. Looking at the balance sheet side, the authority continues to have a very strong balance sheet that includes $118 million of unrestricted cash and investments. Compared to that, there's only a relatively small amount of long-term debt outstanding, $16 million, which continues to be paid off on schedule. In the total net position, the equity or the balance that carries over into the next fiscal year is a total of $393 million. It's important to see how that's broken down. However, of that total, $263 million is the net investment in capital assets. That's already in the form of buildings, vehicles, and other assets, so not necessarily available to spend for future activities. $400,000 is restricted because it's an overfunding of the net pension liability, which makes it an asset as of the end of the year. But everything else, the $129 million left over after those first two categories, is unrestricted and available for future operations. As far as the report to the board, there are two sections. Number one are required communications. Those are essentially a follow-up to the letter we sent at the beginning of the audit, laying out our plan for the audit. There really are no significant exceptions or changes or variances to our plan, and nothing that we need to bring to the board's attention. Within section 2 of the letter are a few other recommendations for the authority. These are not significant items, but observations we had during the audit, and really more of best practice recommendations for future improvement to be considered. Beyond that, there are a number of items listed here which are not specific to DCTA, but informational items that we thought might be of value to the board. The last deliverable, the single audit report, or report on expenditures of federal awards. There were $12.2 million of federal expenditures spent by the authority during the year. We looked at the spending of those to make sure they were in compliance with federal programs and regulations, and we had no exceptions related to our testing of the federal expenditures. That report also includes any findings that we had related to internal controls over financial reporting. We did have two items to include in that section, one related to adjustments that we identified as part of the audit, and two related to investment reconciliations, which were only done as of the end of the year and required an adjustment as of the end of the year as well. So those two items, as we detail in the findings, are largely attributable to the turnover and onboarding of new personnel in the finance department. There are views of responsible officials and DCTA's corrective action plan included in the details of those findings. And so with now, I would say, a stable finance department that's fully staffed, DCTA does have a plan to amend those items and adjust for those, and hope that they don't repeat in the following fiscal year. So the good news is there were no exceptions related to the federal spending, no question costs or anything that would call into question the authority's grant funding. Lastly, a few other comments. We are required to look at the quarterly investment reports. We noted no errors or exceptions related to that. As part of our 2024 engagement, we do still need to complete our agreed upon procedures related to the National Transit Database, and expect to be working through that shortly. And of course, want to thank the CFO, the entire finance department, and the many others throughout the authority that assisted with the audit. Their professionalism, their preparedness, and the assistance that they provided to us was fantastic. And we would not have been able to complete the audit without it. So we thank them very much. And with that, Ms. Evans-Jones and I would be happy to entertain questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from the board on the audit? Seeing none, this is an action item.
I'll offer a motion, we accept the audit.
We have a motion and we have a second to accept the audit. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Keith, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time and presenting this matter to our board.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you again to Plant Moran. Appreciate it. Let's move on to item number 2, discuss and consider approval of the monthly financial statements for January 31st, 2025, grants reported for the period ending January 31st, 2025, and receive an update from the Chief Financial Officer regarding financial operations and enterprise resources program replacements. Ms. Evans-Jones.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about with respect to the financial update is typically I'm here presenting this on the end of a particular quarter. But if you recall from our previous board meeting, it was rescheduled or canceled, and that would have been the time that I would have been presenting you the December information. Time moves forward 1 month, and so that's why we're doing an update in some of the information. We thought it'd be most prudent to provide you the best available information that we have. So that information is as of January. Another thing is I'm trying something new. You know, what I noticed in our previous presentations is the board report that you receive where it details out all the previous years of financial activity and the current year compared to current year budget compared to current year actual. That got a little bit busy to read on the screen. And so what you have available to you in your packet is that full report should you want to go back into full detail. But what I'm trying to do here from a board perspective is distill it down into some high level things that you can actually see to be able to help present some of the key things. So this is a listing of our revenues and other income. As Keith, Mr. Szymanski mentioned in his report, sales tax is our largest revenue category. That sales tax, similar to how it happened for the fiscal year 24 full year financial statements, it is exceeding budget. So blue line is budget, red line or orange line, whatever that is your actual. So you can just see it's a hair above. It's kind of moving consistently with what we saw in the full year's activity. Certain other areas in terms of our operating grants are performing ahead of budget. Red line exceeds blue line in terms of our federal and state operating activity. However, the capital grant, you will notice in terms of like the number of it here, blue line exceeds red line by quite a bit. That is where within that budgeted item is planned spending related to our PTC. And we're currently working with our partners with the FTA to make sure that we've outlined a plan that works for them in order to expend that grant towards funding. So we budgeted to spend it during this year. We're working with them to make sure that we're spending it according to their guidelines now that our needs have changed. We expect to have an answer and begin work with that in the near future. Investment income is an area that continues to exceed budget, performing ahead of budget. And it's kind of interesting for me too, that as I've laid this out like this to kind of see, I feel trapped. Now I'm not trapped. So it's kind of interesting to see investment income and all these other things laid alongside sales tax. Investment income is definitely one where it is performing ahead of budget by a little bit more than 700,000. And we, continue to work towards and work at that area to increase our potential earnings in a safe way according to our investment policy. Lastly, contracted services is one of those areas that's performing just slightly behind budget. And the reason is what we do from a contracted services billing perspective. So the billing is what drives the revenue, is at the conclusion of any given month, we're looking back at what the expenditures are to calculate what our contracted services partners, what their billing would be. So these things are moving about a month behind, which is kind of what's driving that difference.
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have a question about the sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're performing ahead of budget. For some reason, I was thinking that what is the budget number? Is it the previous year plus 2% or what is it?
We budget, I want to say that number is a little bit more than $40 million in terms of what we budgeted for FY25. Give me a second. I printed the thing that, and I can tell you what that full year budget is. Full year budget, 41 million.
Okay, so what percentage growth is that? Do you happen to know that?
Right now, what percentage increase over previous year's budget? roughly, it looks to be about a percent ahead of budget, 1% ahead of where we want to be from a year-to-date budget perspective.
Are you asking how we plan for that in the long-range financial plan? How do we plan for sales tax growth in the long-range financial plan?
Yes.
So I think the answer to that is 2%. We budget 2% growth year over
okay.
year.
Right.
Isn't that correct?
Right. But, and that is how it's planned out for FY 20. For instance, when we do our budget, that's how we plan out like FY 26 and beyond when we're making estimations. But in any given point in time, at any given year, what we're doing is looking more specifically to go, what is current activity producing for us? And where do we feel is the most prudent estimation in the current budget year to make. Sometimes that answer results in us budgeting something that might be 1% or 0.5% larger, even though we've projected out sometimes 2% or whatever. Because we're building a long range plan to look out and make estimations. But when the stuff starts coming up on us, we're looking very closely to see what actual results are happening in the market and where we feel the best estimation is on that particular sales tax.
Okay.
Does that
So
make
do you
sense?
know what percentage that was? So the audit says that last year we had a 0.7% growth.
Mhm.
Is that higher or lower than what we projected in our budget?
We exceeded our budget in FY 24 by a hair. We
Okay.
exceeded our budget and we right now are exceeding our budget by a hair. So the estimations that we're making, we're not falling behind those those planned budgeted numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm moving forward. These are a listing of selected expenditures. I kind of tried to pick the larger ones or ones that have kind of movement, et cetera, and activity within those. For a full listing, I do encourage you to take a look at the financial report that would be included in your packet. So I'm going to talk through just the ones that we have here. In terms of salary, wages, and benefits, that number trends behind budget by a little bit more than 660,000 on a year-to-date basis, largely due to the timing of hires. As you see, we are bringing in new individuals within our teams each time you see those introductions. But so it's the timing of hires, turnover, and other vacant positions that's driving that. In terms of outsourced services and charges, this is an area where we quantify, where we kind of accumulate a number of different projects and initiatives, and some of those have not commenced yet. And so the budget would have contemplated planning out those full expenditures over a 12-month period, and some of those haven't started yet. The details of those are listed on your slide and also in your packet. Materials and supplies is a line item where we capture a number of different things, but one of those is the estimate for IT spending and other hardware projects. Those projects have commenced. They started later on during the year. And again, similar to this comment, the budget would have contemplated a 12-month, spend out of those activities. And so we are moving forward with a number of those different projects. And then lastly, insurance and expenditures, in terms of the budget compared to the actual expenditures that we've had to date, we kind of pay two big insurance bills and then we're done. One of those insurance bills we paid, and it relates to all of our lines except for rail. So all of the property coverage, all of the other vehicle coverages, et cetera, and we make that in an annual payment to our carrier. We've made that payment. And then the second portion of insurance coverage that we pay for is in relation to our partnership with DART, where all of our DFW area transit authorities that operate rail kind of pool together and have a singular rail insurance policy that we work together with. That second piece of the payment is also forthcoming. And so essentially the reason you see a larger actual is because we made a big payment and the budget plans to spend it out over time. Okay.
Question, we have a question on this. Okay, so your year, what you budgeted for was a 6.25 on the insurance.
Mhm.
What we paid out is 933.
was that payment that we had to make, did it go up and that's why it's so far advanced, so far
No.
above? Or,
Mhm.
and where I'm going is maybe next year's budget, you anticipate raising that number up so that we stay on track or stay closer to alignment?
Yes, yes. So the reason that that there's a variance here has to do with the fact that this is presented on a 12-month basis. We calculate what the total amount is of those insurance coverages and we divide by 12. You are absolutely right that one of the enhancements that we should make to the way that we load the monthly budget, one of the enhancements that we should make in our upcoming year has to do with instead of for certain areas that drive very large numbers, loading them in on a 12-month, divide by 12 basis, we should load them in the periods in which we know they will hit.
Okay.
Our new software will enable that. Our existing software doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, grants, you have in your packet a detail of the full grants report. What I traditionally present here is our available balances as of the last period that we had an opportunity to discuss this, and our remaining balances as of the period that I'm providing an update. And essentially what you see in the negative numbers in the third column represents drawdowns or reimbursement of expenditures that we've had in the course of those, what is that, a 4-month period. So expenditures that we've had that pertain to and are allowable under the grant, we have done drawdowns to reimburse ourselves for those expenditures. Now we'll go to investments and investment activity. You have included in your packet this particular one is a monthly report. So this is kind of one of those things where I was talking about at the beginning of the presentation where because we're presenting at an odd time, the report that our investment firm produces for us is a monthly report this particular time. But you can kind of see throughout that report, and I invite you to, and I encourage you to take a look at it. Some of the things I want to highlight here in terms of our investment performance has to do with yield to maturity. So the last few times I've been with you, I've talked about how the market is kind of changing and softening, and you can like literally see, the yield change over time. The nature of what we're trying to do then is to move, it's a dance. You're trying to maintain liquidity so that you can take care of operations within the organization, while at the same time moving things into high investment grade, so allocation by rating, high AAA rated, high quality investments that will help to lock in a yield for you over a period of time. You kind of notice also as well the effective date, the number of the average date of the investments maturing is increasing because what we're trying to do is lock in the yield that will help and benefit the organization that won't come back to us so fast as the market is doing some things to kind of change. So those are some of the details that are included there. The other thing that I typically explain is where we are as of January 30th, 2025, book value, $124.9 million, market value, just a little bit more than that. So you have that unrealized gain that doesn't matter to us in particular if it's an unrealized gain or if it's an unrealized loss, because our position as an organization is we hold those investments to maturity. They're all highly rated investments that then come back in the form of yield to us. Previous slide I showed about how the maturities, the average maturities are kind of extending out. So one of the updates that each year we bring forward an investment policy for your review, approval, and update. One of the updates that we made to the previous investment policy allowed for investments to go out as far as 3 years. And so you kind of see some of those starting to come into place. And again, back to the previous slide and the strategy that I was sharing, you can kind of see how those securities ladder out by type, okay? You can also see those same securities and their current and relative balances in terms of how they're allocated within the portfolio and then their respective yields. ERP. So we're almost there. I wanted to make mention of one thing in particular. What has been happening so we go through the process of kind of putting together your board packet, your information, and that all goes out to you about a week before the meeting. But what is also happening is in real life, we had a 2-week-long conference call. You hang up the Teams meeting with the software consultant on a Monday, you tune back in on Tuesday, and you do that for 10 days straight. And so as a result of some of those final stages of work that we are in related to ERP, we had more information that was updated from the materials that were presented in the packet as of February 26th. So this is outdated information, and I'm presenting you with new information. Okay. In terms of that, some of the things that I wanted to talk with you about in terms of where we are with respect to phase 1 of ERP. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. We are so ready. We are less than a week away from going live on a new system. What's that?
Or condolences.
Yeah, both. I accept both. The team accepts both of those. Some of the things, like you've kind of seen this look and this view in terms of some of the major stages of phase 1 that we've walked through as a team. And I would say, like, we have conducted our user acceptance testing. We have conducted and concluded our end user training. So that end user training is all of the department teams that will be using the system, about 30 or so end users. We spent about a week here in this boardroom teaching them how to use the system and all of that. So we've conducted and completed that. And if they had like a little icon for like a baby check, because these are materially complete in terms of working our go live checklist and working that cutover plan, it's like very few items that remain because, again, our go live date is April 1st. In terms of the things that, some of the kind of things that remain or some of the things that we've been working through, one is kind of working that go live checklist. And during our end user training, I made mention of this go live checklist that has like hundreds of items. Like it's almost like a little punch list of fix this, put this on, belt, suspenders, this and that, et cetera, to work through all of the particular areas. And I jokingly was referring to that list that our Tyler implementation consultants who are skilled at marching teams forward to get to this implementation. I jokingly referred to her list as the scary checklist. So we have very few items that remain on her scary checklist. And we're, continuing to work forward with that. Installing hardware with our end users. So that includes a number of things that will be updated within our new system, enables us to scan in the invoices, the purchase orders. These materials will be all digital and they will begin to work their way through a workflow. So some of that hardware includes making sure that all of our team members have that are entering those transactions have the software compatible scanners. So as they're doing their work, they drop that thing on the scanner, it goes directly into the record or the transaction and is linked up and begins to make its way through the system, enabling our managers, et cetera, to conduct their review process without going, now where's that paper? And what, the papers are all now inside the system. So making sure that hardware is installed. Also, I make mention of the DDTC. So part of this conversion also includes the cashiering function where members of our community come and buy passes at the DDTC and making sure that a new cashiering system is installed at the front window of our DDTC and making sure that team is trained on how to use and operate that system and making sure that the hardware is there and when it needs to be and all of that. It's just been a big dance. It's been a big dance. So I'll talk a little bit about in an upcoming slide about what the March calendar means, just to kind of give you a flavor of why I might actually need condolences. But the other thing that you should expect to hear or talk about in an upcoming agenda item is pertaining to this particular point here about finalizing the contract pertaining to our legacy financial data. So what is happening with this conversion is we are moving all of the data, all of the financial information pertaining to FY '24 and the piece of the year that we're in for FY '25. We pick all that up, we take it over here, we put it in the system. But there is a ton of past year's data, that we have to keep and maintain related to open records requests and things of that nature. But we don't have to necessarily keep it in that same software. There is once we go live with this, then it becomes a process of going back to get all that old data and moving it into something that's not like an accounting processing thing, but it's something that enables us to go back and search information, et cetera. So Javier will be back with you to talk about our legacy system. Essentially, that conversion of probably 8 to 10 years worth of past data is a thing as well. And we need time in order to move that out of the old system. So we need the old system not to go away at the moment that we go live on the new system. Does that make sense? Okay. You like that? Okay. Old information, new information. So some of the information here that I wanted to convey is just some of the things that happened. I made mention of our end user training that happened. The neat part about the training process and some of the things that we've had to walk through as a team is in order to train somebody, you have to know what you're doing, and it's very neat to have to watch our team develop training materials and lead the different areas within our end user training, develop video training materials, written training materials, trying to meet our full team where they are in terms of whichever ways they learn best. So some of that is we had to develop, prepare, and execute our training. Number of people that kind of went through it. And then the thing that happened after that training is we left our end users with a sandbox, a non-real, a non-production environment in which to continue to tinker and play and utilize the materials that we taught them during the training to learn while we continued to work the plan to get us to go live. The other thing that I wanted to convey is all the data is in there now, right now, it's in production. We have moved the FY '24 and FY '25 data in. That includes all of our past balances, that includes vendors, checks that were issued during that time frame. And all of that has been, and it's a very complicated process to take this information, get it in the right format and get it moved into the system, validate it, check it, like it, love it, no, this ain't right, or go back, do it again. And so that process has been completed and all of those final bits of data have been loaded into our production system. We ready. In terms of some of the other things that we've had to work through is I say it's like a delicate dance. So you had Keith Szymanski come before you in the first agenda item to explain to you how the audit was done and completed, et cetera. But that is happening at the same time as we're trying to move those balances that they're auditing into the new system and get them checked and validated. So this right here, these few little 10 words is the biggest dance that I've ever been a part of, from a financial CFO perspective, and making sure that they have the needed time to do their work, and also that we can gather those final balances and get them moved into our new system. Lastly, one of the other things that we were able to do in connection with some of these conversion activities is to work through having some of those preliminary conversations with our auditors to explain how they can feel comfortable that everything got picked up in terms of, they care about the balances and all of those details, how everything got picked up and how everything moved into the system properly. And I think that was a really good and important conversation to have with our external auditors to help them to understand how those balances go forward as they pick up in a new system in the future to move forward with the audit. I made mention of the March calendar. I won't take you through the gory details, but what I will explain is that all of these things from the 14th ahead pertain to what I refer to as like a pre-blackout period. And, you know, the dates in which our teams have to enter the last purchase orders, the dates in which the last checks come out. Remember my text message, I was like, these are last checks you're gonna get, Judge, from the system. So the dates in which those things happen. And then there comes a time where you have to stop putting things in the old box in order to harvest all of those things, get them in the right format and put them in the new box. And so basically everything from the 14th downward is us working the plan and working the timing to make sure that we get all the balances and all of those things moved into the system. You hear me saying that all of the key balances have been moved into the system. That would have been kind of something that we will be doing on Friday and Monday, and we're moving ahead of schedule is what another thing that this calendar tells me, and another thing that makes me proud of the work that our team has done with respect to phase one. Let's talk about the money. So this slide is from a previous board presentation where we went through, remember the cookies came out when we had this particular day. And one of the things that we talked about was our total cost. So these costs here, this 659,000 is the cost primarily related to the people, the implementation cost. And these costs represented in this graph are the annual software costs. The annual software costs in year one, that 173,000 hit exactly as it was intended. The software costs what the software costs, and they're basically billing us on that schedule. So what you'll see going forward in my presentation and in a future presentation on phase two is we're going to take and explore this 659,000 of the implementation cost. That's the moving piece. The software costs what the software cost, right? And there's no budget to actual on that because they billed us exactly what they said they were going to bill us. So keep your eye on the 659. We'll move forward with that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, because the two main pieces is the software consultant and the owner's rep firm, so Barry Dunn. This is the same slide from that presentation, and what we talked about was a total amount of cost for Barry Dunn of $862,000 to be split between the two phases. So 862 and 659. Let's go forward with those. There are your two numbers. Okay. And essentially what we have here is details that we received from our software consultant in terms of the hourly rates that were, the number of hours that were planned within that 659 in terms of how those break down between the two phases. So that's information that our consultants provided us. And then on a billable rate perspective, Barry Dunn's charges basically split 50-50 because we have two 1-year implementations with the same amount of hours that were planned. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go forward and talk a little bit more about the numbers that are in column 1 in terms of phase 1 budget, and then we'll talk a little bit about phase 1 actual. So there are your numbers that we just talked about. And what I did is, in terms of coming up with the actuals, we went to the bills that were paid as of the 28th, and then we looked at the future plans for what we have left to complete. So let's spend some time talking about that. Hey, Sherelle, how are you going live and you got $92,000 left to complete? How does that work? Part of the implementation is always planned that there are a number of different sessions that can't happen until after you're live. I'll give you an example of that. There are modules within our new software that enable us to do bank reconciliations more easily than what we're able to do now. But you can't do a bank reconciliation using real live banking data and until you have real live checks in the system to clear them against. So there are a number of different phases that as we move into the software, that it's always been planned that they come back. Another example is they come back basically the first time you go do your month end close. They want to make sure that you have the tools, that you're ready, that you know what to do. The first time you do your year end close, they're there to work with you and give you coaching. The first time you do 1099s, et cetera. So all of those dates are calculated as a part of the implementation. In the end, I estimate that this particular phase will probably be a little bit more than $400,000 under budget, even considering the estimated time to complete. And so just kind of to give you an update in terms of where we stand there. This team. I put this picture in here because I want you to see the faces of the people that worked very, very hard to bring this forward. This was a picture we took from, and Paul, you took this picture, I believe, right? This was a picture that we took at one of our holiday celebrations. So you see some Christmas sweaters in there. I cannot impress to you the amount of pride that we have in the team that largely was brand new. I received lots of comments from our software consultants, and they're just in awe that the majority of these people came together within the past year or two in order to be able to do this implementation. So if you see a face in the picture around, please do shake their hand, thank them for their work, because they have put in a lot of work in order to get this thing ready to go live next week. And that's all I got. Do you have any questions I can help you with?
Not a question, but just congratulations. I know it's been a long, hard road. And it's going to be a huge deal when you go live. So best of luck when you go live. I know it's never
You still walking?
flawless.
Yeah.
But congratulations on a job well done thus far.
Thank you.
I'll echo that as well. Yeah, thank you so much. That was a great lift. Let's see, this is an action item. We do need to approve the monthly financial statements and the grant period report as well. So, board, what's your pleasure?
Approval?
Motion approved. We have a second to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Again, thank you so much for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is discuss and consider approval of the agreement renewal with Central Square Technologies for software subscription services in the amount not to exceed $108,042.72 for up to a 6 month periods beginning May 1st, 2025 through October 31st, 2025. And then the next period between November 1, 2025 and April 30th, 2026. Presenter Javier Trilla. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Javier Trilla, Vice President of Innovation and IT. Again, this serves as kind of a continuation of Sherelle's previous presentation regarding our legacy enterprise resource planning software, or ERP, powered by Central Square. This is an action item, and as noted, staff recommends the board approve an agreement renewal with Central Square Technologies LLC for software subscription services in an amount not to exceed $108,042.76 for up to 2 6-month periods beginning May 1st, 2025 through October 31st, 2025, and then November 1st, 2025 through April 30th, 2026. I don't know why. My recommendations are always a mouthful. DCTA has used Central Square One Solution, commonly known to and previously referred to as SunGuard, since 2011. While the agency is very, very close to launching our Tyler Munis platform, thanks to the hard work of Sherelle and her team, there is still a need to run both systems concurrently for at least 6 months, possibly up to 1 year. Our current agreement with Central Square expires on April 30th, 2025. And Central Square has proposed a 2 6-month term proposal, each at a cost of $54,021.38. Staff is seeking an extension authority for up to 2 6-month terms as needed. As Sherelle mentioned, really the need to keep both systems concurrently is both for system continuity and access to our historical data. There is a concurrent project running to load all that ERP data from the past 10 to 14 years into a new platform, but this system will allow us to continue working with our old data, produce the reports that we may need, and continue in case there's any issues between two systems, we can still reference the old historically. So any questions on this particular topic?
I have a question. What is the, when we're using Central Square on a monthly basis for everything, is this a different cost?
It's approximately the same cost.
It's approximately the same.
There is
Okay.
no reduction in cost for user accounts. Just for less use in the system, there's no non-negotiable.
Okay.
We'll vote to approve 1 6-month extension. Come back and have this.
We have a motion. We have a second. That motion. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Discussion. Let me just ask. So a 6-month period, what is that? That's giving you 6 months to migrate the data. Is that what this is to do? Provide you 6 months?
I bet it takes 2 6 months.
So, as a part of working, as a part of working with our software provider, as well as the firm that provides kind of a lower cost warehousing of these old historical records, that firm explained to us that the process to convert all of this historic information is a 6 to 9 month process, and it cannot begin until we are live on our new system. And so that was the reason. I'm a little bit with you, Judge, that it may end up taking right at that 6 months or less, but I'm explaining to you that our consultants are advising us that the full conversion process of all of that historic information is a 6 to 9 month process, and that's why we presented the 2-term options. So hopefully that's helpful.
Are the only options we have to do it in 6 months?
To chop it and get it by month. They
there are
won't
no
do it
optimal
involved
options.
with that.
They need to work hustle and get it done.
What specific work is Central Square Technologies doing? Are they doing the conversion, or is this just the annual licensing fee for their software?
Annual licensing fee. It's a hosted cloud platform. So we don't host it on our server, so we have to continue the licensing fees in the cloud and hosting services.
So who is doing the conversion work then in this 9 month to a year period?
We would work, our phase 1 team would be working with Koa Hills. That is one of the third-party firms that was mentioned in my slide that we have already been working with to get all of that FY24 and FY25 data out of the system. They have a skill set in working with this particular SunGuard product that we're our legacy system, and they've demonstrated a level of understanding with the way our data is already set up to lift that out of the old system and move it into the new system.
And when you reference the consultant, that's the one that you're referencing that told you 6 to 9?
Yes, yes. So, and just as I don't know, like as an aside, we were on the call kind of working with our consultants. My sincere hope would have been that we could move into the new system and tell the old system bye immediately because the dates coincided. But then as we were talking with the consultants that have the experience in moving that volume of data out of an old system and into a new system, and further, as we are working with them to do all the checks and the validations, et cetera, just to move 1.5 years of information into Tyler, I can see that it's not like a month process to get it all moved over.
But we could go with a 6-month approval,
Yeah.
and if we need to come back, we can come
Yeah,
back.
just kind of explain it to you why we presented 2 of those
Hours
options.
that they're spending on it. If we're doing that, I want to see some accountability on the timesheets, on the hours that they're putting into the thing. They're not going to say it's 9 months and billing us for 12. I want to see accountable billable hours that they're spending on our account.
Okay,
Sure.
from Coa Hills
I'm
to be
serious.
specific.
Okay.
So let me just,
Yeah,
I think I,
And
yeah,
that- and that is-
I
and
do
that is
all
why
the
we
time.
wanted to-
It takes
Yeah.
a year,
No, let's,
and then what do they do in all the first months 1 through 6?
And this is why we wanted to bring this to the board, because this is a software that would typically be on an auto renew, and it's important for you all to have the visibility. So we can take a 6-month period and then report back if we need to.
so let me just make it clear. So the board, what the board is recommending and what we're gonna be voting on in a second is to approve an annual renewal with Central Square for an amount not to exceed $54,021.38 for 1 6-month period. We all
Yes.
agreement, understand the motion? That's so you know you have 54,021.38. Okay. Down to, yeah, well, he put it in here, so okay, so you have for the motion, you have a second. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor of that motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye, okay. Motion approved. Any nays? Then motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Runs out in 6 months. Runs out in 6 months. Do we have any date that we've got to stop? Say 4.5 months from now in order to get everything lined up to do it for 6 months.
I would say that we would run a checkpoint in 4 months to see where we're at with our Coa Hills provider on creating the new platform.
That does make sense.
And if it looks like we might be going past that term, we'll come back to the board with the option for the second 6-month term as needed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to item 4, which is items 4 and 5. We're going to try to open them up as 2, and then we'll have to approve each one individually. So we're going to open up items 4 and 5, which is number 4 is discuss and consider approval of the purchase of 3 35-foot transit bus from Gillig in the amount not to exceed $2,320,000. And then item 5 is consider the approval of resolution approving a budget revision for 2025-09 in the amount of $280,000 for the purchase of the transit buses. So with that, Javier Trillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this item contains 2 related items: authorization for the purchase of 3 35-foot transit buses from Gillig, as well as the accompanying budget revision that would allow accommodation of the purchase. This is an action item, and staff, for item 4, staff recommends the board authorize the purchase of 3 35-foot transit buses from Gillig LLC in an amount not to exceed $2,320,000, utilizing Washington State Contract 06719-01. And the recommendation for item 5, the staff recommends the board consider approval of a resolution approving budget revision 2025-09 in the amount of $280,000 for the purchase of transit buses. So I wanted to kick off this conversation on what the procurement method was to receive a pricing proposal for 3 Gillig diesel heavy-duty transit buses. Historically, bus procurement is hard. This is my first round at it, and I was astonished by the amount of options, configurations, different ways of buying a bus, right? It adds on a ton of work for our procurement team, operations team, and our planning team. Washington State Department of Enterprises stepped in and they said, look, let's try to make bus purchasing easier. They did a great presentation during the APTA annual conference last year that we attended and kind of got us on board with this particular plan. What they've done is developed a competitively procured pricing proposal with volume pricing that can be utilized by eligible agencies. The particular contract listed here, 06719-01, can be utilized through participating agencies with an agreement with Washington DES and includes multiple bus manufacturers. And in this particular case, Gillig is the manufacturer of our existing heavy-duty transit buses that are on the road for our fixed routes. Some other benefits to using this contract include pre-approved vendors that actually already comply with FTA regulations and standards, as well, and this is important to note, it allows flexibility on the customization of a bus. You're not stuck buying just the one bus that they tell you you can buy. You can still go ahead and go through the configuration, different options that you may want for your bus. Any questions on this slide?
Questions? No?
Operations staff, along with input from the planning team, has identified that the Gillig 35-foot heavy-duty transit bus continues to be the best fit for operating our fixed routes today and in the near future. I say the near future because these buses will also support any new routes that may be identified through the process of our intermediate service plan. The bus in this proposal actually is pretty consistent with DCTA's current fleet, and it also kind of serves as a stopgap as we look ahead to our plan to modernize our fleet with low to no emission technology in the future. This 35-foot Gillig bus supports up to 31 seated passengers with room for wheelchairs, as well as standing room for passengers as well. A quick note on clean diesel buses today. Compared to buses from about a decade ago, there's about a 50% reduction in nitrogen oxide, as well as with new diesel particulate filter technology, there's a 75% reduction in particulate matter. And again, compared to buses from approximately 10 years ago, we're looking at about a 15% increase in fuel efficiency. So the next few slides, I'm going to go ahead and break down some of the options and significant cost drivers that deviate from the base cost of a Gillig vehicle. On the top half of the slide, we have kind of exterior mechanical options that set the bus apart. Starting off with our DCTA paint and graphic scheme. And while I've gone ahead and put the current DCTA graphic scheme up there, there's still some discussion on what the buses might look like in the future, but there is still a cost associated with painting the buses and the graphics from the factory. We're also looking at bonded frameless windows. These windows are a more modern look that actually match our existing fleet today. They also allow some flexibility for our actual maintenance staff to be able to replace windows themselves versus relying on a glass shop to replace windows. We're also looking at polished aluminum wheels with Gillig supplied tires. I don't know how they sell you a bus without supplied tires, but that's neither here nor there. But these actually also match our existing fleet, allowing us to have the same spares for our fleet throughout. And finally, these buses will come with a pre-installed bike rack. The total cost for these options, including rolling up a few other additional minor costs that I've listed on the chart there, are $41,916 per unit. On the lower half of the slide, we have our interior options that are for both our passengers and our operators. Starting off with the operator discussion, we surveyed operators through this process, and we identified a more premium seat that allows them additional comfort as they go through their routes on a daily basis. And we've also added in a driver protection barrier this time around. If you go on any typical city transit bus fleet today, and really the standard recommended through APTA is to have a significant driver protection barrier that kind of encloses the operator off from for physical safety purposes from passengers or anything else that could happen, and health reasons as well.
Question.
Sir.
Does that driver protection include like a film on the glass so it can prevent a bullet round from shattering the glass?
That is something I would have to get back to you on. I'm not totally sure.
Something to be considered. It's a pretty easy film to put on.
Definitely could add that in the future. The window does roll down so that operators can actually communicate with passengers as needed. And finally, for our passengers, we've opted this time around to eliminate the cloth seating portion. We've opted for low maintenance seating that is easy to clean, can remove it kind of prevents those unsightly stains that you may sometimes sit in when you see a city bus. So that's the option that we've decided to go with for these particular vehicles. The sum of these options is $22,071, including other minor options that I've listed on the chart. Any questions on exterior and interior options? Sir, one question.
Do you anticipating the new engine, any materials that we'll need to buy in order to, say, yank an engine out and do whatever maintenance there is?
From what I can tell, it's a Cummins L9 diesel. It's not that far off from the existing basic bus that we have today.
Yeah.
The technology on the vehicle itself has changed, but it's still a standard diesel transit bus. So I don't foresee outside of maybe having to look into our spare count process as we start to receive the buses, and we'll probably work with Gillig directly to understand what our current spare situation is and what we may need to purchase looking ahead into our operating budget.
Thank you.
Sir. The technology deployed in a bus has changed a fair amount over the past 10 years. Paul himself has kind of jokingly referred to a bus now as a rolling server rack encased by a bus chassis. Part of that is what DCTA has invested a significant amount of technology in the vehicles over the past few years. Starting off with operational technology and passenger information systems on the top half of the slide. We're looking at the systems such as our automatic passenger counters, our onboard mobile routers, all systems that feed our Swiftly data platform today that provide the data-rich information that you're used to seeing on a fast basis through accurate counts on our automatic passenger counters. On the left, you see some of the newer technology that we plan on deploying on our fleet today. Handover signage for both inside and outside the vehicle, alerting passengers of the next stop, route information, so on and so forth. A more advanced annunciation system for passengers. And this time around, we're actually including a newer feature that really stands out to buses, I think. It's a passenger infotainment system, full LCD color screen that actually allows the ability to see your next few stops ahead and possibly the stop behind you. Any service disruptions can be placed on that signage as well. Special events, and also an opportunity for our marketing team to place advertising on the vehicles should they so choose at a later date. The total cost per component per bus, or total cost for all components per bus, is $38,830. On the lower half of the slide are systems that you've seen in the past. Our electronic security systems for the buses, standard loadout of access security cameras with the coverage points you see there today, as well as the Genetec network video recorder. This system matches the exact same loadout that our current integrator will be loading onto our buses as we continue moving forward on the main electronic security project. Total costs for these components are $64,167. Important to note that compared to before, all these components will be installed at the factory and commissioned by our integrators if needed. So we'll be bringing a bus fully ready to go and fully ready to commission once it gets here. Any questions on options and enhancements, security?
Surprises me that the cameras are twice the amount of the entire infrastructure for the IT-based part of the bus.
It's a large number for sure. So final pricing for a complete bus takes into account all the options that I mentioned on the previous slides. The base cost of a 35-foot Gillig bus for the Washington State contract is $565,555. When you add all the components that I discussed in the previous slides, the only item not discussed prior is the delivery fee of $4,000 approximately per vehicle. We're looking at a total cost of $736,699 per bus. 3 buses totals $2,210,097. And staff is also asking for a 5% contingency on the purchase of the bus. One of the next steps is for select members of staff to go ahead and visit the Gillig factory so we can actually put our eyes on the buses that we'll be looking at, as well as all the different features and options that we've been discussing over here to make sure that we get the right bus this time around.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the contingency for?
So the
Are we
pricing,
kind of locked into the price?
the pricing proposal that you get from Gillig it's kind of a step one. You really dig down and finalize the order with them, sometimes through a visit or sometimes through final contract discussion and negotiation.
Okay, so we think that the price might go up from the $736,699 per bus.
Well, so we want to get, that is the point of a contingency, you're right. But we also have learned from our partners at DART that sometimes you go to this factory visit, you put your eyes on some of the components that are buried inside that Washington State contract. And you can say, we actually don't need to do that, let's delete it. So I call this number the plus or minus 5% target. And then we go to the factory and try to find the places where we can say, okay, let's scratch this because it doesn't make a material difference to what the bus is going to provide. And that's DART having just gone through this on a purchase of a few hundred buses. They offered that to us as a potential strategy here. Certainly, I'll say for my part, I think for staff's part, DCTA hasn't bought buses since 2016 and a lot's changed in the world. So there was a little bit of sticker shock among us going, goodness, this is a lot of money. So Javier, why don't you talk about the picture in the lower right? Because I think this is going to be a key part of our fleet plan going forward.
No problem. Before I jump into that, I will note that bus production begins 15 months after issuance of PO. So we're looking at from the time we send a PO to the bus is delivered, almost 18 months. But to Paul's point, on the bottom right, you see a bus stripped down to its chassis, very much like this Gillig 1613 up here. Operations team has actually reached out to a couple different coach refurbishment providers out there. What they do is actually go ahead and take the bus and strip it down to a bare chassis, repower the unit, repaint it, redo the interior of the vehicle, basically giving you a like new bus. And the plan is to actually refurbish some of our more reliable buses on our fleet. Some of the older ones that actually have proven to be a good lifelong and for the fleet. So that process is a significant time reduction compared to the 18-month lead time to actually deliver a bus at a significantly reduced cost. I don't have those numbers in front of me today.
I guess certified pre-owned.
So let me ask a question about the 15-month, you said 15-month lead time.
15-month lead time before the bus is even produced.
Before they begin.
Correct.
But are we locked into the price or does the price fluctuate until that 15 months and it begin?
Good question.
That's a good question.
Our assumption here is we sign a purchase contract with them when we sit down at the table and that we're locked in. But if that changes, then we need to come back and tell you all differently. But that's been our conversation.
I'll review the terms. I believe, if I recall correctly, in the pricing proposal, it does say this code is valid for 120 days on issuance of P, something along those lines. So I'm pretty sure we're locked in, but like Paul said, I'd rather go back and.
Well, I mean, I could see we're talking about a 5% contingency. And so I was thinking, well, maybe that 5% contingency is because the price can fluctuate a little bit. So, I mean.
What they explained to us is we sign a purchase order for a fixed purchase amount. The contingency is for the conversation that leads up to the signing of the purchase order.
Okay.
That could include like, you're talking about the camera system and the infotainment system, maybe something along the way comes out that's better. Or there's an upgrade that happens that makes that a little bit more expensive. And that's what that contingency fee could be for that as well, right?
My intent is to lock in the price and the vendors then expecting Gillig to have the vendors deliver for the price that they've said.
Do we want to ask the question, what's going to happen if tariffs are imposed?
So these buses are produced in Livermore, California. That's where the assembly facility is. So
Buy America compliant.
Buy America compliant from FTA, but if there's parts and parts are on, we don't have that answer.
Interesting question.
Yeah, question.
Maybe that's the 5%.
Okay.
So again, one more thing to add here is the reason why buses, we've learned enough about our operation over the course of the last couple of years to know that the most cost-effective way for us to move people at a certain volume, there's a certain threshold where the bus is the most cost-effective. That is causing us to say we need to keep a bus fleet healthy and active. And then we expect that not this summer, but next summer, we'll come back to you and say the data says we could add more routes onto the Connect system. And so again, we're operating buses today that of the 25 we have in service, 9 of them I think were purchased in 2006. They're beyond their useful life. Our maintenance staff has done a great job maintaining them. We need to figure out how to deliver the most service for the least amount of money possible. And right now this is our best option, but I think this refurb is a really good opportunity for us. And you all have an invitation, I think, on your calendars to come out to the bus ops building. The demo bus is going to Austin for a conference and they're going to stop here for a day. And they've offered to open it up and let us take a look at it. So if you all are interested to stop by, please do.
For the refurbished buses.
For the refurbished buses, correct.
So I have a question about, so are these 3 buses, are they replacing old buses or are we adding these to the fleet?
I can't answer this question since so it's a good question. The math is fresh. Short answer is these are additional buses in the fleet. We run today 23 buses on fixed route service at peak. And we have 25 buses that are operational. We have 3 that have been down for a long time that we need to figure out what's it going to take to bring them back, or we need to get rid of them. The FTA guidance says we should have a spare ratio of 20%. So what do you run plus 20%? That would mean 28 buses on a 23 on a 23 bus system. This would get us to 28. Keeping in mind that these buses don't get delivered until next summer. By that point, some of those 2006s could fall out of service, in which case it would be replacement. So we're at a critical point in that we've got to get some fresh vehicles into the fleet and then get ahead of what we expect is going to be some really fast retirements or refurbishments.
Okay,
overall.
I was just curious if there's also additional operational costs, because if we're adding to the fleet, there, I would assume our insurance costs would go up, our fuel costs would go up, things like that.
So great question. The insurance cost, we could get a number for what does it cost for us to have additional buses in the yard under our insurance policy. With regard to fuel, we would wrap that up into our operating cost per hour, the math that we do when we look back and say, okay, last year the buses cost about $135 an hour to operate, give or take. If the bus isn't operating, it's not consuming that cost. But we need to, as we think about this assessment, we need to think, another angle is to think about what's the carrying cost of fixed route
Right.
vehicles.
And I guess that doesn't impact the budget this year for sure.
Correct.
It would maybe be next year.
So in the long range financial plan, we're putting together, here's the fleet plan that's going to justify the money we want to set aside every year to be able to buy buses, and we will owe you answers in that conversation.
Okay.
Any more questions on item 4 before I transition into item 5, which is the budget revision?
Seeing none. On to item 5.
So the original FY25 capital budget included $2,040,000 in funding for 3 buses based on the best available estimates that we had at the time. As we noted, there have been some unknowns throughout the process, including some of the technology costs. Finally, looking and wrapping those numbers into what it costs to deliver a fully equipped bus has changed. As I mentioned, it costs about $100,000 per bus to outfit the full technology package, which really lines up with the $280,000 budget revision that we're requesting above. To allow the purchase of 3 buses for $2,320,000, which is the revised FY25 number. So once again, this is an action item, and the recommendation is listed on the screen as follows.
Board, you heard the recommendations. I mean, the only question would be how much of a contingency you want to add to each one. If you're just comfortable with what you heard, I'll entertain a motion.
Quick question, procedural question. So there's two items here. Do you want them?
We got to take one. Yeah, we'll start with the first one.
Okay.
So we'll start with item 4 and we'll talk about through item 4. So the motion right now, the recommendation from staff is to authorize the purchase of 3 buses and the amount not to exceed $2,320,000 and utilizing the Washington State contract. So discussion on that.
I move approval of item 4.
Have a
Second.
motion to approve. We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. With that now comes item 5, which is now we have to recommend that or consider approving a resolution to make the budget revision 2025-09 in amount of $208,000, which corresponds to what we just approved for the purchase of the transit buses. So is there a motion or discussion on any of this item, or I'll entertain a motion otherwise?
I move approval of item 5, the budget.
We have a motion and we
Resolution.
have a second to approve item 5 as stated. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
With that, that takes us to item number 6. This is to discuss and consider approval an amended lease agreement with Holt Lunsford Commercial for the expansion of this facility, 1955 Lakeway Drive, Louisville, Texas, including an additional 5,088 square feet in Suite 265 under a short-term lease from June 2025 through September, and then considering a long-term lease for 12,695 square feet spanning the combined two suites, Suite 260 and 265. And that will be from October of 2025 through September 2028. With that, we had Mr. Austin Firth, who will be presenting. And thank you. We are gonna, the second item is also the budget resolution that is tied to this. And so we're gonna discuss those two at the same time. So I'm opening that one as well. That's gonna be discuss and consider approval of a resolution approving the budget revision 2025-10 in the amount of $23,380 for the amended lease of the Denton County Transportation Headquarters Building at 1955 Lakeway Drive, Suite 260, Louisville, Texas. Again, Mr. Firth will be presenting on both. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the board. I am, as you heard, we're going to go through the first set of this recommendation, and then we'll go through the resolution for the budget. As Javier mentioned, these are a mouthful, so I'm going to go through this slowly and we'll get down into the meat of it here in a minute. So as part of regular agenda action number 6, staff recommends the board approve an amended lease agreement with Holt Lunsford Commercial for the expansion at 1955 Lakeway Drive, Louisville, Texas, including additional 5,088 square feet within Suite 265 under a short-term lease from June 25 through September 2025, and a long-term lease for 12,695 square feet spanning Suites 260 and 265 from October 2025 through September 2028. And then the second action item here is the recommendation of staff for the board to approve a resolution approving budget revision 2025-10 in the amount of $23,380 for an amended lease for Denton County Transportation Authority headquarters at 1955 Lakeway Drive, Suite 260 in Louisville, Texas. So why are we doing this? Why do we need additional space? So there's several items here we want to just review with you all as to reasons of why we're doing this. The first item we'd like to review with you is the continued growth of DCTA's Go Zone service. And that's essential to bring customer service operations in-house. This is part of a strategy work plan that the board has adopted. So that's going to allow us to expand that customer service area in an adjacent space. We also look at additional implementation of Regional Transit 2.0 that the COG is leading. This could include additional services in member cities. So there's additional expansion opportunities here that will be needed. There's a co-location for efficiency that we're looking at. So as we bring in more staff, we want to make sure they're in combined spaces that foster collaboration, improve workflow efficiency, enhance overall organizational culture. As far as a temporary solution, you know, we are currently in this house right now. So in looking long-term into what does this mean 3 to 5 years away, we are looking at a permanent home in the Old Town Louisville area. That currently right now is about 3 to 5 years away from being able to be moved in. So this provides us a temporary immediate solution to address our growing needs. And then as we look at our current space, we are nearly 100% occupied, and I'll dive into this a little bit later in future slides. So when we looked at our space constraints, we did look at other areas within our agency to grow. Here are several areas that we looked at. Our DDTC center, we potentially could fit that additional staff load there, but just like this space next to us, it most likely would require different modifications, potentially the same or higher costs than we're seeing in the adjacent space here. Would also split the support functions across 2 locations in cities. So as we grow, we want to try and co-locate teams and new members within one area. And then as we grow and look at DDTC being a potential TOD one day, that facility investment may be lost sooner than later. When we looked at rail, same thing here, building modifications would be required. Again, it would split support functions across 2 different locations. There is also a major concern about safety exposures in an active rail environment, so that kind of turned us off on that location. On the secure new office space, that in adjacent areas that we've looked at, potentially, again, moving operations and admin functions over to a new building would require significant building modifications and potentially a higher overall lease cost. So as we looked at the Lakeway Suite here, or sorry, the 4th option here was status quo, wait for a permanent facility. Again, we can spread, people out as far as we can. Again, we have 3 main facilities here at DCTA, but the more we spread people out and bringing new members in, it decreases our efficiency and just onboarding process of new members. And then so we have our preferred option here at the bottom, again, centralizing our admin support areas. And then this is aligns with our long-term goals to consolidate space and minimize our overall facility footprint. So what does that look like? Currently, right here, we are standing in a boardroom. As you can see, to our south, we have all of our cube and office space. To your right is a available space adjacent next to us that came available in February. And I hate to say stars aligned, but really stars did align on this being available. We've been in talks with Holt for some time now, and they've been very helpful for us to understand when this is going to be available and working with us with the lease terms. But as far as cubicle count and space count, we are currently, as I mentioned, near capacity, about 93% today. And then some of that also, we've got a few vacancies that are going to be housed in here that will be filled shortly. But even with those vacancies, we're at a 93% occupancy. I will note that the area in the green is an old library conference room we converted to 4 cubicle spaces. Over time, we've realized it's not ideal. It's a pretty compact space. So we're looking at ways to maybe reduce that to instead of 4 cubicles, 2. Again, that starts to drop our overall available count. So we're going to be at or above 100% occupancy here very shortly. So we looked at the concept of how does this laid out, what is the overall gain on cubicle counts and office space. One thing to notice in this diagram is we are proposing some access points at the front and the rear of the building. You'll see we're proposing to make a larger lobby space that would have a secure access here at the front of the building. And then we would do a poke through of an existing smaller office here at the rear of the building to provide access both at the front and rear of the facility. And we'll go through some of the options for space layout, but this is what we're calling our option 1. These offices are currently intact, but we do have quite a bit of open space here to provide cubicles and some options to provide additional storage closet space as well. When we look at what are the overall options for space count and office and cubicle count, the beauty of this is we have the flexibility to grow. As I mentioned, option 1, you'll see in the green, this is what we get out of it. And then as we need more space, we could start, expanding, into these current offices and make those cubes. So there is room to grow over time. So as you'll see, we'll be netting anywhere from 12 to 20 cubicles and anywhere from 4 to 6 offices in this space. The other bonus here is, as you all know, our kitchen area, our break room area is fairly small for this size facility. So this allows us to get a much larger facility that can actually have seating for our staff to sit down and have a break or their lunch. So when we talk about the motion for the lease, this is the phase one of it is essentially to expand our office space into that one, starting essentially June 1st through September 30th. So this will allow us to expand that, and then starting October 1 would be our phase two, where we expand into really one suite at a different lease term. So when we talked about the 3-year lease, looking ahead as far as TOD and our future admin facility, the landlord provided us with 2 options initially. We just got this 4th-year option this week, so it's kind of hot off the press. But for now, we would like to explore just really focusing in on the 3-year lease. That allows us to get in that space and it not to be absorbed by another entity. We do want to still look at, as we talk through TOD schedules at our next board meeting, we do want to still leave the option open for probably the 4-year option. As you'll see in the yellow boxes, our current rate right now we're paying on this space is $13.75 per square foot triple net lease. So we'll keep that through September 30th. And then it'll raise to 14 thereafter. We'll go to a 4- and a 5-year. That current lease that we have right now rate maintains throughout that duration. The other difference here is the tenant improvement allowance. This is a dollar amount they allow us to improve the space next door. So that as we get on to the further years, that also increases per square foot. So those are the main differences here. So here's our overall 3-year lease outline. The first part of that phase one is getting us through the September 30th date. So that budget amendment is for $23,380. Again, that gets us the space from June to September 30th. One other thing or some other items that we want to talk about are other expenses related to this space. And this is going to be verified as part of a future budget amendment. But we got to look at the fit outs of the space. Right now, it's basically a shell. So we have high level initial estimates coming in from some of our contractors of what it's going to take to outfit this space to be functional as that additional space. And then there's some other operating items that we'll have to include for this fiscal year and then moving on into next fiscal year. Things like fire protection, trash, pest control, janitorial. These will be included in the fiscal year 26 budget, but there will be some line items for the remaining of this fiscal year's budget. This just gives you a breakdown of the 4- and 5-year option. Again, the difference here is that the $13.75 per square foot triple net lease on these 2 options is maintained throughout the lease term. And then the 4% escalator is consistent with all options. With that, before I do that,
Before you do that, Austin. So, Mr. Chairman, you heard the briefing. The initial proposal that we had from the landlord was the 3- or 5-year option. That was before the board packet was published. In the last week, we went back and asked, how could we get better terms on whether the lease rate, outfitting the space with allowances, and that's where the 4-year option came up. I think that the recommendations written as 3-year. If you all want to go with that, we can support that as well. But there is an alternative that we think is preferable at this time, which is the 4-year lease that would give us the better term on the lease rate and the fit out. But also recognizing that it's been our practice to give you all lots of bites at the apple to make these decisions. This is a timing thing because the space is open and it's currently on the market. So want to make sure you all feel that flexibility to make the decision either the 3-year or the 4-year as you deliberate. So thank you.
And just another note, we did push to get 3 1-year renewals and they declined that. So this was essentially at the end of the day what they gave us.
Okay.
So obviously the Old Town Louisville facility is in the very, very earliest stages of planning. Is there any kind of estimate that we could make for what kind of time frame we might be looking at for getting in there?
Yeah, sure. The Old Town Louisville is, we'll give you the board an update next month, and we have a committee meeting next month as well. We're trying to push for RFQ for a joint developer to come in here and help us with that development sometime in the summer. But our current timeline shows, construction to be completed sometime in late 28. And I think that's probably aggressive. So I think conservative, we're probably looking at early 29.
So based on that, it's almost looking like a 4 years might be a better option.
Right.
Just gives us that little bit more flexibility. Okay. Other questions from the board?
I think it makes sense to acquire this. It removes pressure on us to have to relocate, something that makes sense.
So would you like, yeah, I'd like a motion.
I'll offer a motion to approve agenda item 6 as it's outlined for a 4-year.
Okay. You got a 4-year term.
29.
So I have an amended motion here, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like to put that on.
Right, do I need to read the whole thing?
Item number 6. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll offer a motion that we approve an amended lease agreement with Holt Lunsford Commercial for expansion at 1955 Lakeway Drive in Louisville, including an additional 5,088 square feet within Suite 265 under a short-term lease from June 2025 through September 2025, and a long-term lease for 12,695 square feet spanning Suites 260 and 265 from October 2025 through September 2029.
And before that's seconded, I might add that you authorize your CEO to negotiate and execute the lease, adding that to your motion.
Ditto. Thank you. What she said.
A second.
Yeah, motion. We have a second. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor of item 6 as read?
Aye.
But motion by say yes. Aye or aye. Okay, anyone opposed? The motion carries. Okay, now we'll look at item number 7. Any discussion on item 7? Do I have a motion from the board? What is your pleasure?
I'll offer a motion to approve the resolution of budget revision 2025-10 in the amount of $23,380 for an amended lease for Denton County Transportation Authority headquarters in 1955 Lakeway Drive in Suite 260 in Louisville, Texas.
Is there a second? Motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great. This takes us now to item number 8. Discuss an update on the Enterprise Resource Planning ERP Phase 2 implementation for human resources support. Jackie Brunson, VP, Engagement Administration. Good morning.
Chair, members of the board. We are going to discuss an update on the ERP Phase 2 implementation for human resources support. This is a discussion item only, so no action is needed. You guys got to hear this update this morning about Phase 1 getting ready to have a successful launch next week, and it gives me hope for the journey that I'm just starting, and I'm super excited to join the party. So you guys have seen this before, which is the sections of the different phases. This is where we're at today. So my small but mighty team of 4 people are well underway doing amazing work. building the system for payroll, employee self-service, HR, employee information management, talent management, recruiting, time and attendance, and employee expense reimbursements. You've seen the budget information before, right? Earlier today and previously in prior board presentations. So we're in the middle here, phase 2, which is our budget for Tyler, for Barry Dunn support. And we are, as you can see here, 31% of the way progressed through our project, having spent well below that in the budget so far to date. It's just really exciting. And over here is the days we've used. Again, we are giving you information through February 28th of 2025. So we have done a little bit of work since. We were in ERP all day yesterday. We will be there again all day tomorrow. And so those numbers have been used a little bit more since we've made this slide for you. And then here's what we're doing. So we've finished initiating planning, which was the first set there, assessing and defining the system, what we need. And this is where we're at right now. So we're developing the system, configuring it with the recommendations we've made, what we'd like to see in it, testing some of those processes, converting the data from the legacy system over, trying to pull data from Kronos and get it in. We're currently, yesterday and tomorrow, building every employee into the system so that we can take a stab at running a first test payroll the week of April the 7th. So that'll be the first test of the system to see how that works and validate the payroll process and hope it matches what we do already. And then we'll be even further ahead of the game. Once we get through that, we'll get into testing and training the current staff, so HR, payroll staff. And then there's a portion as we go in where Lisa and her team will join us to test and train the time and attendance, employees using the clock, how to approve that time as we go forward, and then on track to do those go live preparations, hopefully for October of 2025. And that is my update.
You're already 31% complete so far,
So far,
and another 6 months of effort.
I feel like in October, I get to feel as good as I, saw that finance was looking this morning,
But you're only doing this with 4 people. Is that including yourself?
including me. We are 4 people.
Wow.
Only 3 people in the room with
Yeah.
payroll or HR as
Yeah.
part of their expertise, and then heavily relying on Mark, which you guys have seen, supporting the phase 1 team from the IT perspective. He's wonderful. He's done this before. He's been a great help, but yeah, 4 rock stars. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your hard work. I mean, I know it was Sherelle's with big lift for her team.
Yeah.
You got a big lift too, and I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you so much for what you've done and what you're going to.
Thank you.
And the additional work you're going to do.
Thanks.
So, any other discussion on this item?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Item number 9 is discuss local and regional updates and legislative issues. That would be the DCTA Board of Directors. I don't have any other regional local issues, regional issues. I know you guys we all have gotten a request to listen to a presentation by Michael Morris on Transit 2.0 here in the next couple weeks. So that's was on my mind. Do we have any other items, Mr. Christina, you want to bring up?
No, sir, I do not.
So, we do have informational reports. That's in your package. And then we have future agenda items, board members' requests. I don't know if we have any from any board members. This will be the time to bring it up. We do have a next regular board meeting is scheduled for April 24th, 2025. Let's move on to reports on items of community interest. Do we have any reports from our member cities, Denton, Louisville, Highland Village?
Mr. Chairman, I have one quick thing to share. Number one, we have onboarded our new marketing and communications firm, and they are doing good work to help us populate our social media feeds. We had a good showing of Transit Employee Appreciation Week last week, and those posts are online. So if you have a chance to take a look at that, please do. The other thing to share is DCTA is a proud sponsor of Serve Denton, Serve Louisville's annual fundraiser. And we have sponsored a table. And if there are any board members who would like to join us for that event, feel free to, you are welcome to do so. It's on April the 12th at Circle R Ranch.
It's a night in Holt, Havana. We're having Cuban food and Havana NRG, which is a 10-piece salsa band, nationally known. And we may even get a video from Gloria Estefan, who's been a contributor to the effort.
Okay, then, and before we go on to the next thing, I'd like to also, I was remiss in saying, we're also, being joined today by Ms. Courtney Morris, who is our, replacing, Mr. Gorfida today. So our next item is, we do have one executive session item. So I will, convene as an executive session for that. The Board of Directors will convene in close executive session to discuss the duties of the Chief Executive Officer pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 personnel matters.
Can we take a brief?
We want
pause?
to take a brief file break? Okay. Good afternoon. It is 12:22 and we are reconvening out of executive session. There is no action as a result of executive session. So at this time at 12:22 PM, we will adjourn the DCTA Board of Directors meeting. Thank you all.